Hey guys, what's going on? Brian here for Animated Muscle and Performance. I just wanted to do a video today going over the characteristics of a good diet. Now this is obviously going to be in my own opinion, but with there being so many different ways to go about losing weight, it can be kind of confusing on which approach is best for you. So rather than focusing on specific styles of dieting, I thought I would go over some common points that I think all successful diets have no matter what style of diet it is. All right, so the first point that I want to make is giving yourself an appropriate amount of time to actually reach your goals. And that might sound kind of obvious when I say it, but you wouldn't believe how many times I come across people who are taking something that should be probably spread out over months and potentially even years, depending on where you're starting at. And they're trying to compress that down into weeks. And it just ultimately sets them up for failure, in my opinion. Because your approach is likely going to have to be so restrictive and so severe that it's going to create adherence issues along the way, as well as long-term sustainability issues in terms of keeping the weight off once you do get it off. So you don't want to think of things in terms of just losing the weight. You want to think about getting the weight off and then keeping it off, and asking yourself, is what I'm doing today setting me up for success, months from now, years from now? And I think if you do that, you can kind of start to problem solve and kind of tweak things to be more in your favor. The other thing I think this does is that it sets you up for frustration, because if you just don't give yourself enough time to adequately get the weight off, you're oftentimes faced with frustration and you feel like you failed, and ultimately you didn't really fail, you just didn't give yourself enough time to adequately get through a weight loss phase. And so I think that a lot of that frustration and those adherence problems can kind of be avoided by simply giving yourself an appropriate amount of time to actually get the weight off. Obviously, when talking about timelines, it's going to depend on your goals and your starting point. But I think that when you're thinking about starting a new diet, definitely taking that into some sort of consideration is going to hopefully set you up for success. Okay, so the next 2 points that I want to make are going to be personalization and flexibility. They kind of go hand in hand, and they kind of expand on each other a little bit. So with personalization, I think a lot of times we try to take a diet that we see somebody else do, or a diet on paper, or we see a diet somewhere, and we try to fit ourselves into the mold of the diet. And I think what we really should be doing is taking that diet and molding it around us, the individual, because at the end of the day, you are the one that's going to have to do it. So making sure that it has some element of personalization is going to be key to, again, long-term success. So I think that your dieting approach in some way, shape, or form should definitely take into account your personal preferences, as well as your lifestyle and any other individual characteristics that may be unique to you. I think if your dieting approach does that, I think that you definitely are another step forward in setting yourself up for success. The next part of that, which is flexibility, kind of expands on that a little bit, and is another way we can add another layer of personalization into the diet. The way I like to have some flexibility within my diet is basically in the off season, what I will do is I'll have my macros. So for example, currently I'm at 400 grams of carbs a day, 220 grams of fat, or 220 grams of protein, and 70 grams of fat. So that would be a lot of fat. And what I will do is basically not put any limits on any kind of food. I can eat literally whatever I want, so long as I'm hitting those macros, the 400 grams of carbs, the 70 grams of fat, and the 220 grams of protein. So the macros themselves are kind of limiting how much I can eat and making sure that I don't overeat, whereas my choice in food is adding a layer of flexibility and personalization to my off-season diet. Obviously, when I'm getting ready for a show, I find that I have a lot less flexibility, and that's purely by choice, and that's because my goals are changing. I'm not looking so much in terms of performance in the gym. My goals go from kind of performance goals to more physique-oriented goals. And I think in those terms, it just benefits me to have a lot less flexibility. But again, it's up to me, and I think that those two elements are gonna really benefit you, especially in the long term, when you're asking yourself, can I stick to this, not just in the short term or the medium term in getting the weight off, but keeping it off after you do get it off. Okay, so the next point that I want to make, the next 2 points that I want to make are going to be sustainability and adherence. Now, the points that I've made up until this point have kind of all been in an effort to create adherence, right? Adherence is key, because it doesn't really matter how good a plan is on paper or how good somebody explains a plan to you and all the benefits of that plan if you can't translate that over into your everyday life. So having little things that create adherence, like giving yourself enough time to actually get through a weight loss phase, having some level of personalization, and having your diet take your individual lifestyle into account. All of these things are in an effort to create adherence within the diet. And what adherence does is give us consistency over time. And consistency over time is ultimately going to give us long-term sustainability in an effort to, not only get the weight off, but keep it off once we do get it off. Okay, so the last point that I want to make is really integrating your dieting approach into your everyday life, thus making it more of a lifestyle shift as opposed to a restrictive diet that you turn on and off like a light switch. Everything that we've talked about up until this point has been in an effort to integrate your dieting approach into your everyday life. I think that really does set the individual up for the most long-term success. I think everything that we've talked about up until this point has been in an effort to create consistency over time, which ultimately gives us long-term sustainability, really. So, over, the entirety of you losing weight and even afterwards, I think that you should be striving to have a good, healthy relationship with food, as well as, taking the opportunity to practice good dietary habits a majority of the time. And in this way, we have enough structure to keep us on the straight and narrow, but it's not so restrictive that we tend to fight it and run into adherence problems. So those are going to be my points on a successful diet, no matter what your approach is. Taking some of those points into consideration when looking at your diet, or if you're currently doing a diet and you're having some issues, taking some of those things into consideration might help you. But that's all I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it was informative. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you're interested in coaching or personal training of any kind, I will leave my information down below. Reach out, contact me, and I will see you guys in the next one.